welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video. As you might have noticed, this is essentially a Taylor Swift channel, so of course we're going to be getting into a new album. We're coming off of the Tortured Poets department. I still would like to make a ranking video or like a send-off for the Tortured Poets department, but in the meantime I also wanted to let you guys know exactly what we're going to go into next. I did make a comment about it on my community section, so some of you might know, but the next album that we're going to be getting into is Fearless, Taylor's version. This is a re-record, so before I like to do albums, when I realized they existed, I like to read the prologues of the album. So if there's one for the OG version and the Taylor's version, we're going to be reading both of those in this video, just so we can kind of get an idea of what to expect with the album coming. So don't expect too much from this video, but let's just get straight into those prologues. Okay, so I do not see one for the original album, but we're going to read what she talked about for the Taylor's version. So it says, "When I look back on the Fearless album and all that you turned it into, a complete involuntary smile creeps along my face. That was the musical era in which so many inside jokes were created between us, so many hugs exchanged and hands touched, so many unbelievable bonds formed. So before I say anything else, let me say that it was a real honor to be a teenager alongside you. And for those of you who have come to know more recently than 2008, I am ecstatic that I get to experience a bit of that feeling that when you can fully appreciate in its whimsical, effervescent, chaotic entirety. Fearless was an album full of magic and curiosity, the bliss and devastation of youth. It was the diary of the adventures and explorations of a teenage girl who was learning tiny lessons in every new crack in the facade of the fairy tale ending she had been shown in the movies. I'm thrilled that my new version of Fearless is with you now. This is Fearless Taylor's version, and it includes 27 songs. I've spoken a lot about why I'm remaking my first 6 albums, but the way that I've chosen to do this will hopefully illuminate where I'm coming from. Artists should own their own work for those many reasons, but the most screamingly obvious one is that the artist is the only one who really knows the body of work. For example, only I know which songs I wrote that almost made the Fearless album. Songs I absolutely adored that were held back for different reasons. Don't want too many breakup songs, don't want too many down-tempo songs, can't fit in the songs on a physical CD. Those reasons seem unnecessary now. I've decided I want you to have the whole story, see the entire vivid picture, and let you see the entire dreamscape that is the Fearless album. That's why I've chosen to include 6 never-before-released songs on my version of this album, written when I was between the ages of 16 and 18. Those were the ones that killed me to leave behind. The process has been more fulfilling and emotional than I could have ever imagined, and has made me ever more determined to re-record all of my music. I hope you'll like this first outing as much as I like traveling back to recreate it. Sincerely and fearlessly, Taylor." Okay, so I feel like this one maybe would have been a good one to listen to first, in a grand scheme of things when I was deciding how I wanted to, look back into Taylor's discography, because this is the first re-recording and it feels like there's a lot more background really attached to this album to explain why she started here. I truthfully don't know why she started with her second album as the one to re-record, other than the obvious of wanting to own Taylor's version last. That makes the most poetic sense to me. Other than that, I really don't know why we started with Fearless necessarily and then went to Red and skipped Speak Now. I really don't understand the order in which she made it, but I can't pretend like my order that I'm reacting to them has been very clear either. So, but looking at this, I do know a few things about this album cycle, one being that it did win Album of the Year. This was the first of her many Album of the Years to come, so I know that this has a pretty defining moment of her career-wise. I am very curious, though, if this is going to be her true country album, and because as of right now, like when I look at the music, I've almost listened to her entire discography at this point, and when I look back, I think her most country album to me is Evermore. Just because I listened to what are labeled as country albums, Red, and I think everyone has agreed that Red is very barely a country album. That's when she was really transitioning into pop. In her country sound, there are country songs, I'm not saying there aren't, but that one is not a true country album. Speak Now, I think, was one of the closer ones as well, but I thought that was pretty upbeat as well. And I don't know. I don't think there's a definition of country, and I'm not trying to take away the country status for them. I'm just curious to see if this one's going to be the most leaning into country, I should say. Just because this is one of her very beginning albums, and I feel like this is when she was truly attached to the genre more. So I'm curious to see of how that's going to play a part in the music and how it sounds, just because I'm thinking that this is going to be the most country-esque one. But it is interesting to see how she kind of described this one, because it was a teenage girl who's learning the lessons with every new crack in the facade of the fairy tale ending. That's kind of interesting, just because the way that I've described a lot of her albums and listening to something like Speak Now. Speak Now was an album where I thought the whole album was a fairy tale almost, and that came chronologically after this, so I'm kind of surprised to hear her say that she was already realizing that the fairy tale wasn't real, because I feel like the next album is really leaning into that fairy tale. So I'm also kind of curious to understand what parts of the fairy tale were cracking for her in this stage of her life, because I really feel like the next album maybe regresses back into that fairy tale a little bit, but could be wrong. I really have no context here to know, so we'll just have to kind of see. 27 songs is a pretty lengthy album. I think Still Red would be the longest one, because I think that had like 30 tracks. But yeah, I really don't know if this necessarily gave me a lot of information about the album necessarily. I feel like we got a little bit more context on the like the reason for the re-recordings, but I do like that she did say, and I feel like I've even touched on this point, because don't get me wrong, we have listened to 3 of the 4 re-records already, so it's not like it's brand new information, but I do like that she kind of mentioned how, you know, this all started because of the master situation, but she has turned it into a cathartic of the art, because she is realizing that, you know, I know this hasn't been done much in history, but you kept the album interesting, because all she had to do was really re-release the songs and make no waves with it. It could have been under the radar, never needed to be anything more than what it was, but she really turned these into events by showing you what the album should have been or could have been. And I think what this has helped me, at least in listening to it, is seeing like, more than anything, I like the artistic process of deciding what is good and what's bad. There's no bad songs, but I do like that, like, you know, on albums, I don't always think that there needs to be 30 songs. I think it's great when you're able to cut down albums, and I don't want them to be short either, but I think it's great to know like what fits the theme the most. And for most of these re-recordings, it's expanded that into the sense of like, wow, this really completes the narrative. I will always say that the All Too Well 10-minute version has added so much context to that song by seeing the other side of the other person. I really, really like that. But then there's other songs where I don't necessarily, I'm like, I see why, and I've said that before in some of the re-recording tracks, like, I understood why that didn't make the album. It's not to say that it's bad, but like, if we're looking at a coherent album or just a song in general, you can see where someone along the way might, or even herself might have said, I don't know if that's meant for this album, or I don't know, rework that into something better. So I do like that, because I think it's nice to see how her mind works. I feel like you understand her more when you get to listen to these re-recorded tracks and understand where they came from and why they're not there. Or I feel like you can even listen to some re-recording tracks and see the inspiration and how it changed another song. So that's something that I really like and really look forward to when we finally get to the vault tracks. But given that there are 27 and 6 of them are re-records, or 6 of them are new tracks, there are 21 tracks that we're gonna have to get through before we get there. So it will be a long while given this channel, but you know, I'm excited to see that. But I think that's pretty much everything that I have for this. I kind of thought this would be long, but I did preface by saying this wasn't going to be a very long video in general. But yeah, one thing that I really want for you guys if you're watching this video is, I mentioned it in my community section, but I would really love if you can give me some links or performances or favorite parts about the era that I can work into the videos, because The Tortured Poets wasn't an album that I can do that for, because it was all in real time and pretty new. But I know this album is literally probably like 15 years old, so there's probably a lot of content that I'm going to be able to watch, interviews. So if you have anything that you really think would help me understand the album, or just that you think would be interesting to watch in general, please let me know. Anywhere you can comment, just feel free to send it to me. I usually see every single comment, so feel free to do that. But thank you so much, and I will see you in our next video.